buddy, put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Oh, yeah. Live around the world on the internet at MichaelDukesShow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Good morning, my friends, and welcome back to the program. It is the Tuesday edition of the Michael Dukes. Why am I so short? My chair shrunk or something. I shrunk or the chair shrunk. I don't know which one. Anyway, good morning and welcome to the program. It's been an interesting 24 hours. As you can tell, I feel a little better. Getting a little, getting back up. No cold medicine this morning. That's a plus. But I made the mistake yesterday of updating one thing in my studio that said, hey, you've got an update. You should probably use this. This update's great. And then, of course, I updated the one thing and it broke absolutely everything in the studio. Every audio chain was broken in the studio. So if there's any problems this morning, I apologize ahead of time. I think I've got it all, but that's just how it works. It was Monday. What are you going to do? But today is Tuesday, and that means we're ready to jump into it with a weekly top three. And here we are in a blustery, windy, rainy. It's like Noah's Ark outside right now here. So, I mean, it's just, it's pretty cool. It's kind of par for the course for today. So we're just gonna get things rolling. Brad Keithley joins us here for the weekly top three in just a second, and then I will have a recap in hour two with some of my thoughts, and then we'll finish up with Chris' story, because by that time, by God, I'm gonna need it. After yesterday and today, it's gonna be fun. We're gonna get all the truth we can. You can't handle the truth. We're gonna get it all. We're gonna get it all done. That's what's gonna happen here this morning. But let's get started, shall we? We got a lot to go over here. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, joins us. Brad Keithley right now with us. Good morning, sir. I hope you can hear me, and I hope I can hear you. How are you this morning?
Michael, I'm doing great today. I hope you can hear me also. Never do updates on a Monday.
Never do. You know what? That's good advice. Where were you yesterday when I was like, this is a great idea. Let me do this. How about it?
Yeah. Preferably do updates on Saturdays and Sundays. Never do, but never do updates on Mondays. That's
never do an update on Monday. I can see that for sure. All right. Well, Brad, let's get started for today. We got a lot of stuff to cover and some interesting things. It wasn't too long ago. What was that? Just last week? Maybe do you remember the Permanent Fund Corporation's recent brag session about how well they were doing? What's the update on that, Brad?
Well, it last week or a couple of weeks ago, but in any event, one of our segments was on the Permanent Fund Corporation's press release that got picked up by Must Read Alaska on how well they were doing through March. It was odd because it was like 20 days after the end of or more after the end of publishing March results, but nonetheless they had a press release and they said how well they were doing on the fiscal year basis and how well they were doing on a longer term basis. Since that time, they've published April, and this is a lesson. This always should be a lesson. Never publish something on a monthly basis when you know the next month could undermine what you were claiming on in the previous month. So let's take a look at what the April results are for the Permanent Fund Corporation. And monthly, after the Permanent Fund Corporation publishes these results, we do a table of what the permanent fund results are, permanent fund corporation results are, and publish it as part of our monthly chart series. So this is April's chart, and if you've got it, we can pull it up. This chart shows it's a running tab since FY12 on an annual basis, and then on a fiscal year to date basis, and then on a 5-year average, 3-year average, rolling 1 year, 12-month average basis. It looks at what the permanent fund results have been in the left-hand column, what the Vanguard S&P 500 results have been, their ETF have been, what the total fund return objective, which is the CPI 5% plus inflation, what that standard has been. That to me is the most important standard to use as a comparison, because that's the basis on which the POMV draw is based. It's based on a 5%, taking 5% real return off the permanent fund. So that standard sort of tells you how we're doing, how the permanent fund's doing against the POMV draw, whether it's keeping up with the POMV draw, running ahead, or lagging behind. And then off to the right, we have all of the various benchmarks, self-created benchmarks that the permanent fund has used over time to judge its own performance. It's sort of like, hey, let me set a standard that I can judge myself against. And that's what all of the ones over to the right are. The year-to-date results are below the line, below the yellow line. The yellow line's an average of FY12 through FY24. The line below that is the fiscal year-to-date average. This is part of what the Permanent Fund Corporation was bragging on for April. It shows that the permanent fund's return year-to-date, fiscal year 25 to date through April, is 4.7%. which is actually a little bit higher than what they were saying in March. But here's the rest of the numbers. The S&P number's down. The S&P number is 2.92, but I checked this morning, and taking into account the futures market through the end of June, the S&P has bounced back up. This was its low point, has bounced back up, and it's now showing an 8+% return on the year by the time we get to the end of the fiscal year. The total fund return objective, CPI plus 5, and again, this is the important standard because it's the one that is used for the POMV draw, sort of reflects the POMV draw. That's 6.24. Now, in the March release, the permanent fund was congratulating itself for being relatively near the total fund return objective. But now the total fund, when you roll a month forward, the total fund return objective is now 6.24%, 1.5% ahead of where the permanent fund is. Permanent fund is, again, these are the permanent fund's own benchmarks that they create for themselves. So permanent fund is exceeding slightly its performance, its own performance benchmark, 4.63%. The permanent fund's got a 4.7. But look at the passive index benchmark. This is the benchmark created by the permanent fund to say, look, if we didn't actively manage this fund, we sort of put it on autopilot. It's another way of putting it on autopilot. If we put it on autopilot, this is what would be the returns that we'd be generating. And the passive index benchmark is 5.81, a point and a half, 1.1 ahead of where the permanent fund corporation's return is. So last month they were extolling how good a job they were doing for their active management of the permanent fund. This month's results are showing, no, they're lagging. Their active management is actually costing Alaskans in terms of returns relative to the permanent fund corporation's own passive index benchmark. The averages below the 5-year average, the permanent fund is producing on a 5-year rolling average basis returns that look pretty good compared to the other benchmarks. Well, except for the S&P. The S&P's at 15.5, 6 points ahead of where the permanent fund is. But the total fund return objective, the CPI plus 5, is at 9.59. They're about in the ballpark. And then on the 5-year average, the permanent fund is a little bit ahead of that. But when you look below that, when you sort of take the cover off or take the hood up, lift the hood up, and look what's going on underneath that, the 3-year average, which will become the 5-year average at some point, is rolling into the 5-year average, and a much better review of how the permanent fund's done recently compared to a few years back that may be distorting the results. When you look at the 3-year average, the permanent fund's doing 4.9% on a 3-year average compared to the S&P at 12.09, fully 7 points ahead of where the permanent fund is. Total fund return objective, the CPI plus 5 is 8.53, well ahead of where the permanent fund is. The performance benchmark, the permanent fund's own performance benchmark, they're lagging it 4.9 to 5.2, and they're lagging the passive index benchmark again, the autopilot benchmark. The 3-year average is 4.9 compared to 6%. So I think what these numbers are telling us, and you can see in the year-by-year results that there is 1 year, FY21, the bounce back year from COVID, that the permanent fund did exceptionally well. They did a 29.73, not as good as the S&P would have done. The S&P had a 41.0% return in that year, but the permanent fund did well in that year. And what's really going on when you sort through these numbers is that year, FY21, is driving the 5-year results. When you sort of exclude it and say, okay, well, what have you done for me recently, and look at the 3-year results, you see that the permanent fund corporation is lagging significantly, not only the S&P, but also the CPI plus 5 objective,
Right.
and even its own passive index benchmark. So I don't think we're going to have another press release
Well,
at the end of this month. I think they cherry picked the month they wanted to stand on, and then, just don't pay attention to that guy behind. Don't pay attention to those numbers behind the curtain.
right. Well, what this tells us, just even if you just look at the bottom 3 rows there, which is the 5-year, the 3-year, and the 1-year average, the story is told. The permanent fund is not earning enough money with the CPI plus 5 to be able to make the draw. Especially compared to the S&P or the Vanguard fund, the S&P 500 Vanguard fund, which is, it's twice, almost 3 times what the permanent fund is earning on a passive basis. I mean, that should tell the whole story right there. I don't care if you've got 1 or 2 good months. What's the 5, 3, and 1-year average look like? And the bottom line is that we haven't made enough money to pay for everything and to keep the fund up to the proper amount. And we've lost out on, a significant amount of money, almost 3 times the amount of earnings we could have got if they had just sat there with the Vanguard 500.
Yeah, and this rolls in, Michael, and explains why the press for merging the 2 accounts is so important to some people, because you look at the permanent fund returns, the earnings the permanent fund is achieving compared to the CPI plus 5, which is what the POMV draw is based on, and you can see that the permanent fund is consistently running below what they would need to be earning to keep up with the CPI plus 5. So one answer to that would be, hey, maybe we ought to change our investment strategy. Maybe we ought to go on autopilot, because autopilot would do better than we're doing. Or maybe we ought to look at the S&P strategy, because that would do a heck of a lot better than what we're doing. But instead of, hey, maybe we ought to be reevaluating our investment strategy, what they're doing is they're talking about merging the permanent fund earnings and the permanent fund corpus together in a way that, as we've talked about on the show before, opens the back door into the permanent fund corpus, so that when you have, as they are doing, when you have this string of performances that are lower than the CPI plus 5, and you're not earning enough to cover the POMV draw, right, what merging those 2 accounts are going to do is allow them to come into the corpus and start draining the corpus to keep the money rolling, even though they aren't earning enough to cover the draw.
That's not to mention the fact that if they did go on the set it and forget it scheme of the Vanguard 500, they'd save themselves nearly $1 billion in management fee. $1 billion, like $890 million in management fees
per year.
Yeah, exactly, per year. which is a lot when you're talking about an $80 billion fund and you start chipping away at it 1% at a time. That's not a small amount by any strange stretch of the imagination. I mean, this is just some astonishing stuff, and I am surprised that more people, more news outlets, more folks, they're not picking up on it. Well, I mean, what are we missing here? Quickly.
Well, legislators aren't talking about it. If you look at the news media, they follow what legislators say, and legislators aren't talking about this. They're talking instead about merging the two accounts together. They see these numbers. Legislators see these numbers, but they're talking about merging the two accounts together to allow the back door into the corpus. And that's what the media is following. They're following the legislators about that. If we had legislators that were talking about this instead, I think the media would start picking up on it.
Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, the weekly top 3. We're getting ready to continue on here. We're about to jump back into it. Don't go anywhere. We'll return in just a moment. We'll be back. Number 2 of the weekly top 3 right after this.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Brad, here's what I don't understand. I'm just looking at these numbers. 15 plus 12 plus 11. I mean, it's 22. We're looking at, I mean, this is almost a 30%. That was 30, almost a 42% increase over the 5, 3, and 1 year average versus barely a 20% increase. And if these guys were really about making as much money for the government as they could, you'd think they'd be clamoring to get to the S&P 500 model instead of the current managed model that the permanent fund has. What's the, why? What's going on?
Well, a couple of things, Michael. One is the current approach employs a lot of people down in Juneau. They've got a lot of analysts. They've got a lot of investment advisors. They've got a lot of people on contract that are friends on contract, friends and advisors on contract. And so it's like undoing any bureaucracy. There's we don't want to do that because, oh my gosh, how many people would we have on the street in Juneau suddenly? The second is this is a sort of a classic case of safety first, right? If I rely on a bunch of advisors, if I do a bunch of risk management and spend a lot of time on risk management, then I'm not subject to being, I'm likely not going to be criticized because I can always say, hey, I just relied on these guys. I relied on Wall Street, or I relied on these advisors, or I put my money with these guys. Don't blame me. I'm the one. I relied on all these other people, and we had all these risk management tools that we were using. So it's risk aversion in a big way. And when they're asked about the S&P, they say, oh, well, that's volatile. It goes up and down. It goes up and down. It goes up and down. And it does. I mean, the S&P is more volatile than the boring thing that they've put together. But the thing about the S&P, if you look at it over time, it goes up and down, but it's going steadily up. It has corrections at times, but it's going steadily up. What this is doing, what the permanent fund is doing, is sort of flatlining. So they're saying, look, we are less risky, we're less volatile than the S&P, and so we're better. If you look at the beta, which is a measure of volatility, we have a better beta than does the S&P because the S&P is more volatile. They're not looking at the end result of where the S&P is taking you.
Sure, if you're looking at it month to month, the S&P is much more volatile, even sometimes year to year. But if you're looking at it in a 10-year, which is what investment is supposed to be about, it's supposed to be about the long term. If you look at it in the 1 and 3 and 5 year averages, you could see that it's 50 to 100 to 150% higher returns if we go with a more volatile plan. I mean, I don't understand.
And I guess the third thing I would add is we've got a highly unsophisticated board. We've got political appointees on the board of the permanent fund, and they're the ones that are responsible for, ultimately responsible for what's happening here. So they don't know. In all honesty, I don't think they know enough to ask questions. They don't know enough to pose alternatives, and so they're being advised by this staff that again is well paid, a bunch of them in Juneau, a bunch of advisors that they're able to keep on contract, $1 billion worth of advisors they're able to keep on contract. So if they ever want to jump ship, they've got friends out there they could jump to. So we've got a combination of things, but I think at the apex of it is a board that's really very unsophisticated in this stuff. Likes to take selfies of going to board meetings. We saw that this past week when they were on their way to a board meeting. Likes to take selfies and say we're board members, but they really don't know what they're doing.
Yeah. This is some crazy stuff. And boy, I'd love to put you in a room with all these guys for about 30 minutes and just, ask them some questions. But, that's never going to happen. That's never going to happen, unfortunately. All right. Well, apparently I lost my ding, so my ding didn't go off. We're 10 seconds out. It's one of the things I didn't test. So here we go. I guess we'll see how this works. All right. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking, no ding again. What the hell? All right. We're going to continue. We'll be back, jumping back into it. Here we go.
Public enema number one. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number one, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
Oh, shut up. I'm not. I'm a nice guy. All right. Brad Keithley continues. The weekly top three continues. We're on to number two. And number two is, what should we expect from Trump's, not his upcoming visit, but he just had three guys. Maybe he'll be having an upcoming visit. I put upcoming, and what I meant was his visit that just happened with all of his talking heads from the EPA and the Corps, and all the guys that just showed up. So, Brad, we just had all the luminaries in town. What should we expect from this visit?
Well, we've got three major ones in town. We've got the Secretary of the Interior, we've got the Secretary of Energy, and we've got the Director of the administrator of the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, and that's who have been in town, and they brought a lot of attention, I think, to issues that Alaska has had, significant issues that Alaska has had in the past with getting permits and getting leases and getting access to additional lands and getting the permits timely to develop those lands when they found oil and gas on those lands. And I think they've done a great job this past week of bringing those issues to attention and bringing attention to the fact that the Trump administration is different about that and has progressed that. It's been interesting to watch Dan Sullivan, who's up for election in 2 years, next year. It's been interesting to watch Dan Sullivan sort of glue himself to those three. And take a lot of credit for, and he deserves some of it, take a lot of credit for progressing those issues and getting the administration to pay attention to them. Here's what I think is really going to be the result, not so much of this visit, but of the efforts by this administration to loosen up the rules and open up lands and promote development. I think that the Willow project, Conoco's Willow project, which had a number of additional pieces to it at the time that Willow applied for it, in addition to the core project, had a number of additional step-out projects in its application that were denied, essentially, by the Biden administration. I think those additional projects likely will go forward, be permitted, and within the 4-year span of the current administration, Conoco will be able to get so far along with those that they likely won't be able to be undone. So I think that's a plus of what the Trump administration is doing. I think there will be additional leasing. There will be additional leasing in NPRA. There will be leasing in ANWR, and I think people will respond to that not by paying high prices, but will respond to that by putting some risk money in to see what happens. You're not going to get a project in ANWR, and you're not going to get additional projects in NPRA developed within the 4-year window of the Trump administration. But if the leases are available, I think people will put up money to buy those leases, and will begin the process of evaluating whether the oil and gas underlying those additional leases is economic to produce, and we'll get sort of down the road. Here's the key: at the end of that 4-year window, we'll have another election, and if the presidential election, is a continuum of the Trump approach, then that spade work begun during that 4-year window will start to produce results in terms of finding prospects and applying for permits and beginning to go forward with new projects. But you're not going to find people putting a huge amount of money, investing a huge amount of money into those projects until they know what's going to happen at the end of that 4-year window. Because what you don't want to do is put a bunch of money in trying to define and identify a project and start putting your arms around a project during the 4-year time period, and then at the end of that come back to a Biden administration again, and all of a sudden have all that stuff denied. So we'll see, outside of Willow, which I think will make some solid steps toward additional development. I think we'll see some beginning steps in MPRA, other parts of MPRA, and in ANWR during that period. AKLNG, one more. AKLNG, God love it. We'd all wish that project to go forward. But even when you look at the article in the ADN today about, the results of their trip to the slope and all of the talk that those officials did about the AKLNG project, you see very little response from potential customers from Japan or from Korea, or from Taiwan or from the Philippines. Everybody's being careful. All of the potential customers are being careful until they see hard and fast numbers on what the project costs are going to be and what the prices are going to be. And Dunleavy, Sullivan, and all of the federal officials can talk all they want about how this project's going to go forward. And Chris Wright said the Secretary of Energy said we're going to twin the TAPS pipeline. Right. They can talk all they want about that, but until we see hard and fast numbers, we're not going to see a lot of progress on that.
Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, the weekly top 3. Overall, though, this was a good visit, and it shows that the Trump administration, I guess, is pretty serious about what's going on, right? That's the kind of the whole point. That's the direction they're going.
Yeah, I think it shows attention to Alaska, which certainly the Trump administration is giving, and Sullivan gets some of the credit for that. Governor Dunleavy gets some of the credit for that. I think it shows attention to Alaska, and I think it shows incremental steps. But aside from Willow, which I think it is going to show concrete benefits from this. Aside from Willow, I think it's all going to depend, first of all, on what the perception is about what's going to happen in 4 years with the next election cycle, and secondly, about what the numbers are going to say on AKLNG. And to some degree, the Trump administration is working at cross purposes on AKLNG. When you look at steel costs, when you look at machine costs used in the pipeline business, those costs are escalating rapidly. It's hard to do economics in this cycle. I've got friends down in the pipeline industry in the lower 48, and I'm asking them about how they're doing their projects. They said, we're taking vacations. We're going to wait until this settles for a while before we make big decisions about big money, because we don't know where the costs are going. Right. So it's I think on AKLNG we can talk a lot, and they certainly have talked a lot. We can encourage potential markets to look at it, and they've certainly done a lot of that. And they can talk a good game about how they're going to be, support it. But until those numbers come in, and until the numbers stick, until they translate into hard and fast projections, offers of what the rates are going to be for the pipeline costs, until those numbers stick, we're not going to see a whole lot of real progress on that front.
Well, and this has been your and my contention for, ever since we started talking about it, at least 10 years. And this was something that I had changed my mind on about probably close to 15 years ago, because I was very much, gas tomorrow. Let's get gas tomorrow. Until I started talking to some folks much smarter than me. And I said, how come we can't get it done? And they laid it out and they said, it's all about the economics, right? It's all about we've got to get it and somebody's got to pay for it. And then they've got to be paid back. And I started looking at it and realized until the economics of this project work out, we can talk about it all we want, but it's just pie in the sky until we get solid numbers and somebody who's willing to take that investment. Now, if Trump did it as a national security or national infrastructure project, and the government paid for a big chunk of it, well, maybe it's doable. But if you're looking for private people to pick up the pieces, I don't know how they get it done, Brad. I really don't. I don't care how many press conferences you have and how many people you sign letter of intents of, oh yeah, we'd love to have your gas. But, again, nobody's going to jump when it's 30 or 40% over market value.
Yeah, exactly right, Michael. And what the AK LNG project has done is done a good job of sort of creating a scenario under which all this would work. If they filled the pipeline completely, if they had it, going up 365 days a year, if producers were willing to develop and sell gas at $1, which is the assumption, if they were willing to do that, then the economics would look sort of marginally okay. And they've done a great job, I think, of creating that scenario under which things might be okay. But the likelihood of that scenario coming to pass being the actual scenario that develops is relatively low. One other thing that I will add, a lot of my friends in the lower 48 say, oh, this is just kabuki theater. What's really going on is Japan, Korea, Taiwan, all of these people are looking at AK LNG and saying good things about it and listening to Trump and letting Trump talk about it a lot as a negotiating tool for lower prices out of the Qataris, who Qatar has a huge amount of LNG that they're marketing and other LNG projects throughout the world, including LNG projects on the Gulf Coast. And so what Alaska really is, again, from my friends in the lower 48, what Alaska is really being used for is a stalking horse saying, yes, if all these numbers came together, it might be an economic project. We would tilt toward that project. If it was otherwise economic, we would tilt toward that project because of the strategic benefits, and sort of just trying to get Qatar to say, okay, well, we'll drop our price another 50 cents if that's what it's going to take. Right. to get you to buy from us or Australia or the US the US Gulf Coast projects. That's, my friends in the lower 48 say, that's really, the game that's being played here. And maybe it is. And as I said, AK LNG has put together a scenario under which maybe it could all fit. But when the true numbers come in, when the true economics come in, and it's time to lay down real money, that's the point at which we will find out whether any of this works.
Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. The weekly top three continues. Brad, quick tease on number three.
Number three is what is number three? Oh, number three is an op-ed by Angela Rodell in the Juneau Empire that I really want to spend some time talking about.
Okay, well, we'll go to break then, and you can really spend some time talking about it. Because, wow, there's some crazy stuff going on here. All right, we're going to be back with more. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show continues. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Let's return in just a minute with Brad Keithley. Back with more right after this.
Listened to by more staffers in Juneau than any other show because their bosses told them to. And after what they just heard, oh man, they're going to be pissed.
You're a bad, bad man.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay, Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, and the weekly top three. Wow, Brad, you're on track, not off the rails as usual. Brad's been saying the same thing this whole time. Why do I even bother? Okay, wait, we're testing the ding. It's going to be 2 seconds. 1 second. God damn it.
Never on a Monday. Never updates on a
Never,
Monday.
ever update on a Monday. What was I absolutely thinking that this was going to be a good idea? All right. I'm just going to test it here. Oh, hey, look, there we go. Okay, so I got it. So that's what it's supposed to be. Okay, play this much when this much time is left. Okay. Place that. Yep. Okay, got it. Okay. Well, we'll see if it works. There we go. We'll see what's going on. Oh, Melissa, she just spent the morning at the tire shop after 2 of her tires got slashed last night. Okay, well, great. That's the state of politics these days. We'll see what goes on. Yeah, no, I mean, look, I'm cautiously optimistic that maybe with all this attitude of development and everything else, some things will happen. Are all the things going to happen that everybody's talking about? Like, do I believe that we're going to have an Alaska LNG project? I don't think so, but maybe some other things will come out of it. I don't know, but I don't believe that it's the end all be all that everybody's backslapping each other over.
Yeah. Well, again, some of this is the Dan Sullivan reelection tour. And the backslapping is, oh, Dan, you did a great job in getting these guys to come and getting a positive attitude. And look, a positive attitude is much better than a negative attitude. And in the case, as I say, in the case of Willow, I think it will produce some positive results, some additional development that otherwise isn't going to occur. Actually, that puts the budget, the state budget, in a weaker position because of the way oil and gas tax credits work. It'll extend out the time that we actually get revenue out of these projects. But nonetheless, it's a good thing to have additional oil and gas development in the state. But we can't. I mean, those people who say, "Oh, well, that's going to solve the problem. We don't need to worry about anything else," that's wrong. And those people who say, "Oh, if we get AKLNG, that'll solve all of our problems," that's wrong. A, we're not going to get. It's very unlikely we get AKLNG. And B, look, AKLNG is predicated on a field price for gas of $1 or less. What's the royalty? There's not a whole lot of royalty that gets produced out of a $1 sales price. So yeah. It is better to have a positive attitude. I think it will serve in terms of Willow some additional development. I think it will position ANWR and some parts of NPRA for additional development if in 4 years the nation looks like it's going to continue down this road as opposed to deviating yet again. But we've got to temper this backslapping within the bounds of reality.
Right. And again, the backhanded problem with all the things that the president's doing is obviously it's driving the cost of oil down worldwide. He said he had a goal of wanting to get oil in the low 50s was his goal. And we're struggling at 65. What happens if he gets it down into the mid 50s? I mean, it's then it creates a real problem. It's a real problem for sure.
Yeah, we've got a lot of cross purposes going. We've got the desire to get oil prices lower. We've got the desire for all these trade resolutions that result in higher import prices that drive up the price of steel and drive up the price of machinery and other things that we've developed foreign supply chains for. And we've got the desire to develop, which relates to cost, which relates to the cost going up. So costs going up, revenues going, prices going down. So it's there's a lot of moving parts, and a positive attitude about some of the moving parts is good. But we've got to see where all these moving parts land before people start putting down hard and fast commitments to offtake gas.
Well, inquiring minds want to know you're traveling, a world traveler.
Yeah.
Where are you at today?
I'm in Chicago. I went to one of my Celtic group had a concert last night at a place here in Chicago. It's a Celtic group I followed I followed the people who are in it. It's a relatively new group, but it has some long-standing players in it. And so I made a trip up to Chicago to see it. And so I have the podcast the next morning, so I couldn't take the morning train back. So I'm just in a hotel room.
All right. Well, good. Well, I appreciate you sacrificing a little bit and having to spend a little bit more time on the ground before we get it. Okay. No ding. So I don't know what's going on. I mean, it's there, but it didn't go off. So what else are we going to, can I unsilence the alarm? I don't even know. All right. Well, we're 15 seconds out. There we go. We're going to continue on and keep things going on. Brad Keithley, our guest, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, the weekly top 3. Let's get to it. Like, subscribe, share, do all the stuff, the YouTube-y things. Let's do it. Here we go.
Public enema number 1. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number 1, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
And I just realized I played that one last time. What are you going to do? Oh, well, hey, good morning. Welcome back to the program, the Michael Duke Show. Hello. We're ready to go. We're going to continue on. The weekly top 3 continues with number 3. And that is, of course, Angela Rodell. She only cares about the working people. She just cares about the working people. All right, Brad, tell me all about it. What do we got here?
This is. I mean, we could almost classify this as the humor segment of the show. Angela Rodell, former director, executive director, whatever the hell the title is, of the Permanent Fund Corporation. After she left that job, somewhat unceremoniously, after she left that job, she stayed in Juneau. She stayed active. She ran for mayor of Juneau in the last election, lost, but ran for mayor of Juneau and has become active in Juneau politics. She wrote an op-ed, a My Turn, what they call a My Turn in the Juneau Empire, the title of which is "Time for a Government That Works for Working People." And what this is built around is a 3-pronged petition that's being circulated with Angela's support to do 3 separate things with respect to Juneau. One is impose a property tax cap. The Juneau Assembly keeps increasing the property tax rates, and it would impose a cap. The second is to exempt groceries and utilities from a sales tax. Juneau currently has a sales tax, doesn't exempt groceries and utilities. And the proposal is to have, the petition is to have by petition to have an election that would exempt groceries and sales tax. And the third is to restore what she refers to as restore poll-based voting. Juneau has elections by ballot now, basically, and it would restore the obligation to go to the polls to cast a vote. So that's what she's promoting. And here's the paragraph where I started chuckling. The paragraph is this: the current system hits working families the hardest. She's talking mostly about the property tax cap and the exemption for groceries here. The current system hits working families the hardest. It's regressive, it's unsustainable, and it's driving people away. If we want to keep Juneau livable, not just for the wealthy, but for teachers, nurses, fishermen, caregivers, and retirees, we need to act now. So so Angela is focusing on working families and concerned about a regressive tax system and concerned about, a system that focuses just on the wealthy, and she's trying to undermine it. This is the same Angela Rodell who maybe a year, maybe 2 years ago, in a debate that had me defending the PFD and Larry Pursley saying, "Oh, we need to change the PFD," had Angela Rodell as the third person arguing that we ought to eliminate the PFD. And all of the money ought to go to the state. And keep in mind that the PFD is one half of what happens with POMV distributions. It's the part that goes largely to middle and lower income Alaska families. The other half protects the wealthy and protects oil companies by substituting for taxes that they would otherwise pay. And she wanted to eliminate the PFD and use all of the POMV draw for this tax protection, tax substitution role. That helps the wealthy, and by using PFD cuts undermines working Alaska families, middle and lower income Alaska families. This is the same. We now have the same Angela Rodell talking about protecting working families against regressive taxes. We have the same person doing that now who, a couple of years ago was arguing for eliminating the PFD entirely. What's the, when you look at Venn, sometimes you look at Venn circles and you try to figure out where the overlap is, who they're trying to protect.
Right.
When you look at the Venn diagram of what happens with PFD cuts, which she advocates, and you look at the Venn diagram of what happens with what she's proposing with the property tax cap and the sales tax exemptions and so forth, the group that's getting protected is the wealthy. The wealthy is going to get protected by the property tax cap. The wealthy is going to get protected by to some degree by groceries and the exemptions for groceries and utilities. So what's really going on is the working families that Angela's really interested in protecting are the wealthy families. She's couching it like Zach Fields does and Elise Galvin and a number of others at the legislature. She's couching PFD, or she's couching her proposal at the Juneau level. She's couching it as, we're going to look out for working Alaska families. That's what Zach Fields and Elise Galvin and the others do at the legislature. They say, PFD cuts are to protect working Alaska families. We're going to take that money and we're going to spend it so much better to protect working Alaska families than
Right.
they can themselves. So it's a tool, it's a device. Saying you're trying to protect working Alaska families is a device to try to sell a product. In the case of Zach Fields and Elise Galvin, it's to sell PFD cuts. In the case of Angela, it's to sell property tax caps. And so it's really, it's sort of funny to see the juxtaposition of what she's saying now compared to what she said just a year or a couple of years ago about PFDs. It's not about working Alaska families. There's something else going on here.
And I pulled the article up this morning and read it real quickly, and then I just went back to it. And of course, the paywall at the Juneau Empire just, now I can't read it. But there was a paragraph there where she talking about working class families and how the people are disconnected now from their government because they're not paying. It's like she's taking some of the greatest hits from people like Ben Carpenter and things like that, and she's twisting it to her. She's making herself sound so reasonable and so all these other things when she's a big government gal. That's what she does. She doesn't care about the working people. It's again, like you said, she's selling the product, but you can see how they cherry pick some of this verbiage and they use it and twist it to their own ends.
Yeah. And so it's a well-worn path, because when you look at the legislature, when you look at Zach Fields, when you look at Andy Josephson, when you look at Elise Galvin, when you go down the line on the House majority, and to some degree, some members of the House minority, when you go down the line, it's that verbiage. It's, we're protecting you. We're protecting you with child care credits. We're protecting you with spending on this and that government program. We're working on your behalf. It's at the same time they're doing that. They're saying they're protecting you. At the same time, they're taking money out of your pocket, out of middle and lower income Alaska families through PFD cuts. And they're taking more money out through PFD cuts than it would cost than the benefits that they're redistributing. So it is never buy into the words. Just like Angela, don't buy into the words that she's saying. Understand the economic impact of what's going on with their proposal, and the economic impact the totality of the economic impact that she talks about, both at the local level and at the state level, is not pro working Alaska family. It's pro wealthy. And the totality of what Zach Fields and Elise Galvin and Andy Josephson talk about at the state level is not pro working Alaska family. It's pro because of the way that they're using the POMV draw to protect protect against taxes. It's pro oil companies, pro top 20%, pro non-residents. That's the economic effect of what they're arguing. And Angela's, I just had to chuckle as I was working through this op-ed, because it's just a bunch of words. It's poll tested words. This gets the response you want. Just throw them out there. Have some sort of idea about how that sort of relates, but throw them out there and then do whatever you want in terms of the actual proposal.
Right. No, and again, this is just another snapshot of the mindset that's in Juneau right now, for what's going on. Like you said, Galvin, Fields, these kind of people who are taking these things and twisting them to the point to where you're saying, you need us. This is why we're here, to protect you from you, essentially, right? I mean, that's essentially what the whole fallacy is that we know better than you how these money should be spent. And so let us do that. And if we put it under the guise of protecting the working class, well, that just sounds sexy, right? I mean, that's really what it all comes down to. It's all about how is it packaged at this point.
Yeah, exactly right. I did some numbers, did some calculations over the weekend. I used my weekend for that. And we have like $1.5 billion that's been transferred with these PFD cuts, the PFD cuts that the legislature just enacted. We've had $1.5 billion, about $1.5 billion, that's been transferred out of the pockets of middle and lower income Alaska families and is being transferred to being a tax shelter for the top 20%, the oil companies and non-residents. But they say they're doing it. They say they're doing it for the benefit of working Alaska families. But we've had $1.5 billion taken out of their pockets to fund the additional tax shelters. But the words, when you look at their words, we're just doing it to protect you. Government's here to protect you, and we're taking your money. We're taking money out of your pocket and sort of sprinkling some of it back on some of you to protect you. Same way with Angela. We're taking money out of your pocket and we're sprinkling some of it back to protect you.
Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, the weekly top 3. That wraps it up for today. Brad, thank you so much for being part of it. We appreciate you coming in today.
Michael, as always, thanks for having me.
Folks, we got more coming up. Hour 2 is dead ahead. I got some thoughts on this. We're going to continue. And then we got Chris Story, who's going to be joining us at the bottom of the hour, next hour, for our Uplift, which we'll probably need by then at some point. Back with more, The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We'll return after this. Boy, Kyle comes into the chat room like a bomb and tries to tell everybody and apparently he missed the whole part at the beginning where we talked about how the governor is responsible for what's going on with the permanent fund board. But what we were talking about with the legislature is their fascination with combining the corpus of the fund and the ERA and how that is wrong. But he's telling us how wrong we are. So Kyle, you can't just pop into the room, read one comment, and go off without context.
Oh, yeah. Kyle can. I mean, that's easy for him to do.
He can, but it's not the right thing to do is what I'm saying, I guess, and then get heated when somebody tells him to pound sand or whatever. But anyway, this is the reaction of what's going on. The problem is that they're all to blame, right? They're all to blame. The legislature's to blame. The governor's to blame. The historically past legislatures are to blame. The Republicans are to blame. The Democrats are to blame. Everybody has got a fair share of blame on what's going on right now. Even the electorate for putting these numbskulls back in office over and over and over again. But yeah, it's a problem, right? I mean, this is an overall problem.
It is, and it starts with the perception that the legislature knows better than the citizens. The legislature knows better how to use citizens' money than the citizens do. And so the legislature can take money out of the pockets of middle and lower income Alaska families, huge, $1.5 billion out of the pockets of middle and lower income Alaska families, and redirect it over to their chosen uses of the money because they know better. But the problem is they don't. The problem is while it may benefit a few, why a few may get more benefits out of redirecting that money than they would have had they got the money in their pockets. It's taking money out of all middle and lower income Alaska families. It's taking money out of all of the economy that's driven by middle and lower income Alaska families in order to redirect it to a few. So yeah, when the Republicans think they can do that, when the Democrats think they can do that, when voters think they want to elect people who do that, it causes a problem because we are redistributing money that otherwise by statute is supposed to go to the pockets of middle and lower income Alaska families, and the legislature is redirecting it into the pockets of a select few. And that's going to be a problem.
Yeah, no, it is. And of course, the more they talk about this, the more anxious I get. The more they talk about combining the corpus of the fund and the ERA, the more anxious I get, because most people, most Alaskans, don't understand how it works. They don't understand the mechanisms for how all these things work. And so they just believe what they're told in the news media, because the news media is not digging deeper into it, not giving you the problems or the foibles or the pitfalls of it. And they just go, oh, okay, you have to do this to save us. Okay, go ahead. It is because it's complicated, and most people are just not paying attention. And the news media is not doing their job in digging into this and saying, okay, okay, so you want to do this. What are the downsides? What are the pitfalls? What are the problems? Oh, well, nowhere, because this is how all sovereign wealth funds work. No, that's not that's not what's going on. But this is this thing. This is what really makes me nervous about the future of Alaska, is if we get to this point to where they're able to slap these things together without any kind of real resistance, where does it go from there?
Yeah, and we don't have. I mean, people don't back up and step back and say, okay, why do we need to combine these two accounts? The earnings reserve. I got to say, Joe Paskvan, former senator from Fairbanks, who I disagree with on a lot of stuff, Paskvan's got this right. Paskvan is backed up. And he said, okay, let me understand this. The earnings reserve is being drained. So we need to do something to protect, to ensure that we continue to get money out of the POMV or out of the permanent fund. But the earnings reserve is being drained. We aren't earning enough money to keep the earnings reserve whole. There's a problem there. And the problem is, of course, the Permanent Fund Corporation isn't generating enough earnings.
Well, shouldn't that be a red flag to begin with? Shouldn't we either, stop? We're not earning enough to draw from here so shouldn't we stop drawing at that point, or find a way to earn more? One of those two things. That's the, and the fact that they purposely have done this by transferring $8 billion into the corpus of the fund over the last 5 years. So, for future inflation proofing. Right, for future inflation proofing, and now they're like, oh, now we don't know what to do. I mean, now what do we do now? And it's a crisis of their own making. It's exactly what they wanted to do. Yeah, which is a little spooky at this point, for sure.
Yeah, but Paskvan's got it right. But Paskvan's one of the few. I mean, Joe's asking the right questions. But if you read the media, Sean, if you read the ADN, or you read the Alaska Beacon, or you read, the Fairbanks News Miner, or you read any of them, they're all going, oh yeah, well, there's a problem. The earnings reserves. So let's just combine the two. That'll do it. It does it only because you then set up an opportunity to drain the corpus. Yeah. Think about what the consequences are. But we don't have that.
No, it's some crazy stuff, but. Don't worry. Angela will save us. She's here to fight for us. She's here to fight for us, for sure.
Yeah.
Fight for the working man and woman. She's here to protect us from ourselves.
It's almost, Michael, as if they walk into their PR consultants and they say, okay, what phrases poll test the best? Forget what I'm proposing. Yeah. Just tell me what phrases poll test the best. And I'll use those. Yeah. And then I'll do what I want behind the scenes, but I'll use those phrases and claim that that's what I'm doing. I'm protecting Alaskans. I'm looking out for working Alaska families.
All right, Brad. Well, thank you so much for coming on board. We will talk with you again soon, okay?
Michael, thanks for having me.
All right, folks, we got to go. The Michael Duke Show continues. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Here we go.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Hello, my friends, and good morning to you. How you doing? Are you ready for a continuation of our Tuesday commentary? Yeah, it's Tuesday. We just finished up with Brad Keithley from Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, who came in and gave us the weekly top three. And, you know, it's a little frustrating to watch, my friends. When we see where the problems are, we see where they lie, and what we see is a continuous go along to get along. We see a continuous business as usual mentality. Okay. It's astonishing, and specifically when we're talking about things like the Permanent Fund Corporation. Okay. Which is now the largest pool. It's the largest income stream for the state, right? The permanent fund draw. That is now the largest income stream for the state, followed up by oil and by, taxes and fees and everything else. But it is by a few percentage points the largest draw of the state. And now we are looking at how that money has been earned and what it is doing in comparison to other such funds. I know they keep going back to this idea of this sovereign wealth fund. Oh, this sovereign, that, we heard that was a Bill Walker chorus back in the day, that what we needed was a sovereign wealth fund. Instead of this permanent fund thing that we've got, we needed this sovereign wealth fund deal. And look, here's part of the problem. I've got the chart that Brad had up on the screen again, just for a second, because I know you guys on the radio can't see it, but I wanted to make sure that I'm reading the numbers correctly. Okay. And you can go back and watch this on YouTube or Facebook or Rumble or wherever you catch the show later on. But I just want to point out a few very, very simple things. One, we're spending nearly $1 billion a year to allow them to lose us money. $890 something million a year in every stinking year in management fees. Okay. Now, when your fund is at $80 billion, $82 billion or whatever, something like that's a chunk, because it's 1%. They're worrying about, and they're on the 0.5% margin. They're like, oh, we made an extra 0.5%, when there's almost a full percent going to just the management. That's a significant chunk of money, right? I'm just pointing that out. I think it was Brian who brought up the fact that the Harvard Yard at Harvard, their wealth fund had over almost a 10% return, 9.76% return. on a couple hundred $1 million worth of costs or whatever that was associated with that. And we're crowing the fact that we're getting a 4.7% return. We're excited about that. 4.7. We beat our benchmark performance by 0.1%. Well, what if you backed out half of the management fees of that? What would it be then? Oh, well, then we'd be, well over. I mean, and you look at the numbers compared to, again, just an S&P 500 fund like Vanguard, and you look at the numbers, and yes, it is more volatile in the year-to-year ups and downs, for sure. But I was always taught, I'm not an investment guru, okay? Nor do I play one on TV. But I was always taught that investments should never be looked at in a term of less than 10 years. That was what, they said, look, if you're looking at an investment, you've got to look at it in 10-year, 20-year, 30-year, 40-year. That's the increments. You need to be looking at it in 10-year increments, not what happened this year or next year or last year. And when you look at the funds from that perspective, you could see, wow, the S&P 500 is crushing it compared to what's going on with the permanent fund. They're literally having double the return that the permanent fund corporation is doing in a 12-year period, 10, 12, fiscal year 12 to fiscal year 24. The S&P 500 returned 15.34%, while the permanent fund is averaging about 8% over a 12-year period. And yes, when the permanent fund is, when the Vanguard takes a crap, the permanent fund doesn't take quite as big as a crap. But that also means that when the permanent fund does well, the S&P does even better. In fiscal year 21, the permanent fund had a 29% return. Wow. The S&P had a 41% return. So it's the ups and downs. Yes, there's a lot of volatility to it, but in the long run, the S&P is doing okay. And they're doing it for, I guarantee you, they're doing it for a fraction of what the permanent fund corporate. They're not costing $1 billion a year to manage any of the funds that are just tracking on the S&P 500. It's crazy. And now they're talking about, well, we just don't have enough money. There's just not going to be enough money in this fund to fund government. You'd think that would be a clarion call to say, maybe we should pull our horns in a little bit. Maybe we should, reduce our spending, find some efficiencies, find some of these things. Maybe those are the things that we should be doing. But instead, what they say is, well, there's not enough money in the earnings reserve to cover our draws. So what we need to do is we need to combine the funds. Well, combining the funds doesn't increase the earning potential, right? Because the corpus of the fund and the ERA are still combined. They are still combined for the purposes of investing. The ERA does have some stuff that's a little more liquid than the corpus of the fund does. So, I mean, it's a minor impact on the effect of how much the investments would. But what it does is it would give them access to the larger pot of money in the corpus of the fund. So if they're saying there's not enough funds in the earnings reserve to pay for government, so what we need to do is we need to combine them all so we have access to the bigger pot of money, that's them telling you they want to draw off the corpus of the fund. That they're not willing to cut back now. And let's face it, folks, If they're not willing to cut back now, when we are facing potentially, right now, they're talking about $1 billion to $1.6 billion deficit next year, because they just don't know, right? They don't know. They don't know where oil's going to be. If the president gets his way and we get oil down to the low 50s, oh, Katie, bar the door. For every dollar of oil that goes down, it's another $42 million in revenue that's lost for every dollar that's lost. If we're at 65 now and it gets down to 55, he said he wants it to be in the low 50s, but let's just say it just goes down 10 for the easy math. It goes from a $1.6 billion deficit to a $2 billion plus deficit. If they're not willing to pull back on the size and scope of government with that facing them, well, we just don't have enough in the ERA to pay for government. So we need to combine them so that we could get more and eat the seed corn that's generating that money. You see what I'm saying? The problem is that most people don't pay attention. It's not doom and gloom. I'm trying to lay down some facts here. Harold's like, it's all doom and gloom, unless Harold is bringing it up, in which case it's very prescient and we should all be listening. But it's not doom, it's facts. I'm trying to get more people involved. I want you to be able to go to your friends, to your coworkers, and have a conversation at lunch that said, did you hear what they're trying to do? And put it in relatively simple terms so that they understand what we're talking about here. Because my fear at this point in the game is that they've got the news media working for them, and not like that's not like they're on the payroll. It's just that most of these people are not investigative journalists. They're not looking at it from all the different perspectives. They get a press release from the legislature and they rewrite it, and that's news. You know, they've written several stories about this combining of the permanent fund, and not one reporter that I've seen has said, okay, this is what they say it'll do, but here are the potential downsides. Not a single story has covered the potential downside of combining the earnings reserve and the corpus. And the average person on the street in this state doesn't understand how the permanent fund and the permanent fund dividend and the earnings reserve account and the corp, they don't understand how all those things are put together. It's not that they couldn't, it's just that that's just not on their radar. It's just not thing that they and so when they see a news story that says the sky is falling, help me, right? When they see that the sky is falling and that they've got to combine the earnings reserve and the corpus of the fund to save you, to save the state, to save us. And they're like, oh my God, because here's what they'll say. And here's how they'll sell it. Here's how they'll sell it. I guarantee it. Are you ready? Here's how they'll sell it. Well, unless you want taxes, we're going to have to combine the earnings and the corpus of the fund, because otherwise we're going to have to institute taxes. That's where I guarantee you, because so many people in this state are tax averse on the right, and all the people on the left want the state to grow its budget, and they want the state to have access to all that big chunk of money that, oh my God, $80 billion. Yes, let us get our hands on it. And those people who might stand in the way, the people who are on the right, conservative Republicans, but who are so adverse to the word tax that they will crap themselves silly to do anything to avoid it, even if it means the ultimate destruction of the state. In the long run, the financial stability of the state, they'll be like, oh yes, take the permanent fund. As long as we don't get taxed, they They don't think to the end result of what that means, of course. They just don't, Yeah. And Bill's just saying, he says, nobody seems to give a crap until it's all over. I've tried this with coworkers. I know. I've tried this with coworkers. And they get this glazed look in their eyes like, what? I can't tell you how many times that I worked at a radio station and somebody says, they can say, can you explain this to me? I heard this. Can you explain it to me? And I start explaining it to them and their eyes go, ugh, and they just glaze over. And they're like, oh, okay. They've got to care. They've got to care about what the future of their family looks like in this state. That's really that's the problem here. We've got a huge problem. And the biggest problem is that most of Alaskans are kind of disconnected from the whole thing. And that was why Hammond started the permanent fund dividend, was to keep them connected. But even with that, we became more and more disconnected. And when Walker vetoed half of it and Alaskans didn't automatically revolt, that was the beginning of the end. Because that was the time to throw the weight around. That was the time to be outraged. That was the time to call your legislator and tell him to override his veto and to do all those kind of things. And they never did it. And part of it was because we were just fat, dumb, and happy and had just come out of huge spends and we'd just spend the CBR down and everything else. And but nobody is willing to take the hard call to say we've got to start cutting things back. And yes, we'll probably have to have taxes of some kind because they've gone so far afield that you just, the septic shock to the state. If you cut out $1 billion or $2 billion out of the state budget, it would literally kill the patient. Right. But there we go. That's what's going to happen. I guarantee you. The thing will be, we've got to combine the funds. Otherwise, you'll have
taxes.
That's it. That's what it's going to be. Okay. Well, that was fun. Let's continue on, shall we? We got more coming up. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We'll be back in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. Don't forget Chris Story coming up at the end of the show. And we'll be back then.
Listened to by more staffers in Juneau than any other show because their bosses told them to. And after what they just heard, oh man, they're going to be pissed.
You're a bad, bad man.
The Michael Duke Show.
Mm-hmm. Okay. God, that was bugging me. All right. It's a little better. It's a little better. Randy. Randy. He says the City of Fairbanks Permanent Fund has a combined fund, as many other giant funds out of the state do. The key is to have a draw rate that's properly sized so the fund sustains its in perpetuity. We agree on that, Randy. The problem is they don't have a sustainable draw rate, and they refuse to turn the current draw rate down. That's why they're pushing to combine the funds, because they could live within their means of drawing from the earnings reserve. And in fact, they could have lived within that 5% draw for many years, except for the fact that they transferred $8 billion out of the earnings reserve to inflation-proof, future-proof the fund. That's good, right? That Congratulations, Harold. She's an honor grad. Good deal. Good deal. Randy should have his own show. He should. You know. Yeah, the point of the ERA was to limit access to the corpus. That was exactly the point, right? They wanted to be able to have something that was liquid and accessible, but protect the nest egg. I mean, oh, God almighty. Let's see. I'm scrolling backwards here to see if there's anything else. And Bill, I guess to this, I mean, I read Bill's comment earlier, but just to what Bill said, this is why I say don't grow weary in well-doing. I understand. Nobody gives two poops until it's over, right? But you can't stop trying, man. I've been doing this for 25 years. The same thing. I mean, different flavors, but it's all the same thing. And we have a few wins, but mostly it's just like that, Bill. Smashing your head against the desk until you're unconscious and then waking up and starting all over again. That's what it's like. Yeah, you can't. Kim just said, you can't say you didn't tell them. I know. But as I said earlier, it's a lot more fun to sit with a bowl of popcorn and watch the train go off the tracks from a distance. You know, I told them, right? Well, I told them. I warned them, didn't I warn them? Except when you're on car number 2, and then you're like, I told them. It's a whole different deal. It's a whole different point of view. Right? It's a whole different point of view. Okay. I think we've got everything that I think I'm caught up on everything. I saw Donna, although Donna didn't really make much of a comment. I saw she made one comment this morning in passing. We should reach out and see if Donna would come on and talk to us about this as a expert in these kind of things. What does it mean?
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
Okay. Welcome back. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. That's right. We're going to continue on here with our little sideshow of the things that we were going to talk about here. But you know, again, I just boy, I want to do this hot take on this thing, but I don't know enough to. I don't know enough to really well, I do. All right. I have a hot take. Are you ready for this? Now, I guess I'll be forward with you and I'll just tell you right up front, this is a hot take. Okay. I have not been a commercial fisherman for almost 40 years, 38 years, 36 years, 30, I guess, whatever it is. It's been a hot minute. But there's an article by Nat Herz in the Northern Journal that came out yesterday. And I was going to talk a little bit about this yesterday, but I just wasn't feeling up to it because I couldn't connect the dots, the cold medicine in my brain, yada, yada, yada. And I've been hesitant to bring it up because I don't want to appear mean. But I guess I'll just talk about it because I feel like there's a lot of people out there, and this is part of the conversation from yesterday, from that opinion piece, where the guy was like, where's my kids' health care, man? They're both working full time, got a brand new house, and then they got to pay for all this child care on top of it, man. You should pay for that. Right? There was a little bit of that going on. So this story is it's a deep story. Nat Herz actually does some good writing. But he's talking about the problem with fishing in Southeast Alaska and some of the Kodiak Island villages and some of the areas around the coastline where native fishermen have slowly been squeezed out of these areas. And they say that the blame for the mess is the 1973 statute, which is the, I can't remember the name of the statute. Anyway, it basically says that it's a limited opening. It basically prevented, it set the amount of people who could harvest fish in a given area. And it goes on to talk about how the indigenous people and some of the villages and that they've been squeezed out of the market, that they have not been able to, now they're not able to get a permit or do any of these things, and that something should be reversed in that area. But one of the things that he hits on in the article, the Limited Entry Act, that's what it was called, it was designed to make commercial fishing more profitable and sustainable, right? By limiting the number of boats on the water. And at the time of the law, anybody who was operating on the water at that time qualified for a permit. They didn't have to buy anything. And there was also a provision built into this called free transferability, which meant that you could then sell that permit on the market. Well, now you've created a permit. Now you've created a market for supply and demand, right? There's a scarcity. And some of those permits were, $100,000. And what happened is that over the years, many of the people in these communities, these native communities, saw a depopulation effect in their communities, and a lot of the owners, they sold the permits, or they moved to another location with the permit. And so now they're coming back to the legislature to say, well, you've got to open this back up, and you've got to do, I don't know exactly what they want to do. Now, one of the things that they want to do is that one group wants the Douglas Indian Association, the tribal government. They want to buy one of the permits and then pass the permit inside from one skipper to another so that everybody can do it, which in and of itself sounds like not a bad idea. The problem is that the original law was also meant to prevent corporate takeover or groups. They wanted it to be individuals, not companies or things like that, or tribes in that regard. And after going through this whole article, what I see is, and I'm summating this article in a big way. This is a big, long article. You should go read it. It's in the ADN from NatHERS. But the bottom line is that over the last 50 years, because it was 1973, right? So we're now 52 years in, we saw some short-sightedness on the part of the people who had the permits in these areas and in these villages. They sold the permits, or they moved, they moved and took the permits with them, or anything else. And now that those decisions were made, and now they're reaping not the benefits, but the whirlwind on these decisions, years later, now they want somebody to come in and change the rules on that regard. Now, I'm not saying that there's not other problems with trawlers and draggers and all this other kind of stuff, but I'm just saying specifically in this case, it's another one of those things where they want the government to come in and save them from their own, maybe not maybe their relatives, maybe their neighbors, maybe their ancestors, or their predecessors' decisions. Because the permits were there. Where did they go? Well, they got sold to somebody else, or they took it and they moved with it somewhere else. And now they're saying, you need to fix this, legislature. You need to open up more permits, or you need to create some kind of fund where we can buy them, or I don't know exactly what they're looking for, but it's a solution to government from a problem created by government and then exacerbated by people basically like, well, I got this permit, I fished it for 20 years, and now I can make $100,000. I'll do that. They didn't pass it on to somebody else in the community, or they didn't do, that was some of the problem, or they moved with it and went somewhere else. And it's just kind of that whole thing where we keep having this problem where people keep looking to government to solve problems for either things that government did earlier, or for behavior that people should be aware that there's consequences for. Again, this was the opinion piece yesterday about the guy who basically said, well, my kids, they got an education and then one moved out, and because the university didn't get funded, he didn't come back. Okay. And then the other one, they just had a baby and they bought a new house, and they both work, and they both had a baby, and they bought a new house, and now the state should pay for the child care. Why? Why is it the states? You decided to get married. You decided to have a child. You decided to buy a new house. You decided that you both needed to work. Somewhere in there's got to be some responsibility for, hey, this is what's happening. This is what's going on. Why is it the government's responsibility all the time to save people from themselves? There are people out there, I saw this, oh, you got to save us from these floodplain things. You knew that there was a flood. You were in a floodplain when it happened. Now we've got to have government come in and prevent you from hurting yourself, because otherwise we have to bail you out later. And that leads, of course, to more government nanny state stuff where they come in to say, we're going to stop you. We have to license interior decorators now because you could harm yourself with that taupe carpet. I see this as just such a bigger overall problem that people, instead of looking for solutions in their own backyard, coming together with their neighbors, creating a loan fund or investors to do something, to buy a permit or to do something, instead of that, they go to the government and say, bail us out, sugar. And I'm not just talking about individuals, it's, and like I said, this is a hot take because I'm not as familiar with this whole system as it is. But again, coming right on the heels of that article from yesterday, that was my first takeaway from this article. Was, wow, somebody sold theirs, so now nobody has it now and nobody can afford it. But what happened to the people who were there before? Did they not care about their communities, or did they? I don't know. I don't have the answers. But I see a troubling trend, and that trend is Uncle Sugar, please help us. That's the trend I see. So, anyway, we got to go. Back with more. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We return right after this.
We're broadcasting live through a series of tubes,
allowing all of these entities to provide streaming stuff going on the internet.
well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay. Hey. Let's, man, do you guys hear that little beep that keeps happening? I don't know what's going on with that. All right, let's get Chris Story on the. Let's get Chris Story going here. See if this thing will work. Really? Damn it. I'm calling you back.
Calling me back.
Yep. What the actual hell is going on here? Well, let's try this again, because I just did this morning and it was working fine. I don't know what to say here. All right, hold on. Let me turn it off and turn it back on. Yeah, bang the sides. That's my next choice, is to get out the bigger hammer and to bang the sides. Let me try this one more time. See if we can get this thing working here. Okay. There's the thing. Come on. Oh, my Lord. We're going to try this again. We're going to get it going on. We really are going to get it going on. Come on. Chris Story is waiting patiently for me in the wings. See, now it's telling me that it can't connect. Does it? It's not going to help me if you call me. I'm trying to fix it. I'll call you back. I just yelled at Chris Story. I'm going to hell. All right. Let's try this again. One more time. All right. Ready? Let's test this. Okay, that's the sound. Okay. Let me turn this on over here. I'm going to have to cut this whole thing out of the podcast because nobody wants to listen to me hem and haw throughout this whole thing. Man, I worked on this for 2.5 hours last night and I got everything to work. And now it's not going to work. Disconnect. All right, I'm just going to disconnect everything. we're just going to disconnect details, unpair, disconnect. Okay, let's scan again. See if we can get it working on here. I've only got 2 minutes left, and if not, I guess we'll be without Chris Story this morning because he doesn't do the video thing. He doesn't like that. He doesn't like the video thing. And I can't get this damn thing to connect properly. Nope. So I guess we'll see what happens. All right. Well, I'm going to cut all this out of the podcast. I just sent Chris the video link. We'll see if he actually, I told him he didn't have to be on the video. I just put the audio up. But we'll see. We'll see what happens here. I don't know. The hell, dude. I can't. I can't today. We could start our positivity tomorrow morning. Tomorrow on the program, Bernadette Wilson's going to be with us. Here we go.
The Michael Duke Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Here's Michael Dukes.
You know, I tested everything this morning. And it was all working. And then I tried to call Chris. And it wasn't working. So now I don't have Chris Story on the phone. And I've disconnected my phone from my system, but my system won't let go. And I mean, you know, I don't even know what to say. I don't even know what to say. And Chris doesn't do the video calls. He does it via phone because he's old school like that. So I don't know. I gave him a link. We'll see if he rings in via video this morning. We'll see. I mean, he won't be on video. He'll only be on audio. But he could be on video. But he's just going to be on audio with us today because that's how he rolls. Chris Story, the man from Homer, joins us via video. Hello, or via audio. Good morning, my friend. How are you?
Where there's a will, there's a way. You can't keep me out of here. See, this is life lesson number 1. Like the ant, go over, under, beside, chew through. We did it.
See, and you can use this route every day from now on. Okay, Chris, help me, brother. What are we talking about today? I'm so frazzled at this point. You take the show. Jesus, take the wheel. What's going on?
Just calm down, Michael. I've got you. I am the wind beneath your wings today. No problem. I wanted to talk about one of my great loves in this life, which is the art of bonsai. I'm terrible at it. In fact, when the day Tiffany and I got married, we bought together, we picked out a bonsai, and I think it died within a month. Now, you'd think, wedding day bonsai dead. We changed the way we looked at it. We instantly both agreed the death of this bonsai means the death of all of our problems, the dying away of all of our problems. And 36 years later, I'm proud to report, I think that was true. But it's truly how we looked at it. We changed our thinking and we changed our world. I still love bonsai, and every single one I touch dies and not a pleasant death. It's a slow, moldy, rotting kind of. So I've not given up on bonsai, but I have pivoted. You'll be happy to know I've pivoted to succulents because they're harder to kill and yet just as pleasing to my eye in a small little vessel is the succulent. But yeah, that's what I wanted to talk to you about: is change your thinking, change your wealth, change your thinking, change your health in your life and relationships and everything else.
Change your attitude. Okay, good. I need to change my
Thinking.
attitude. Yeah, change my thinking. Change my stinking thinking is what you're saying.
Okay, let me put it in terms of nerd like you can understand. And that's said as a compliment, by the way. The nerd part. It's like your UI, your user interface. That's your attitude. That's what we see. That's the symptom. That's the result of your thinking. You got to go back to the basics. You got to go back to Java or C++ or whatever it is that you program with. You have to change your thinking, your subconscious. What Christian Larson called the great within, which is your subconscious. And he's the one who started the Optimist Creed and created the Optimist Club worldwide. And he knew that it's your subconscious you must train, just like the roots actually are what create the bonsai. You have to bind the roots of subconscious, which you cannot see, has to be trained long before you can ever start training the limbs. That's what we see. That's what we enjoy above the soil are these beautifully trained limbs that look like an ancient 100-year-old tree in this little tiny bound pot. But it's the roots you and I can't see. That's the beginning of what actually creates what you and I call bonsai, same as the attitude.
Yeah, I mean, and of course, once we set, you've talked about this several times, once we set the subconscious on a course, then we can keep working towards it, and the subconscious works away at it even when we're not thinking about it. And so getting that attitude right helps to cultivate that kind of stuff to continue with your training.
Yes, and it has to be done early. You think about the gardener that trains the young bonsai tree, the sapling. The roots have to be bound early, but at the right time. They have to be trained in the right way at the right time to produce the results that you want above the soil. Here's the problem. Not all of us had that kind of training as young people. Not all of us had the fertile soil with which our minds were planted that could grow into an abundant lifestyle and the affect of either wealth or health or even thinking you deserve it when in fact you do. So you can't go unring the bell. You can't go cut the healthy roots of a life this far lived. You can't bind them. It's too late. But it's not too late to start training the subconscious of your mind. Seth Godin has a great description of what he calls marketing. And I think it's applicable to anything you want to do, have, or retrain your brain or your subconscious in life. And his description of marketing goes like this: people like us do things like this. That's effective marketing. People like us do things like this. Well, I'd say to you, if you look at a wealthy person that you are somewhat envious of their life, be it their money or their relationships, the freedom, the time freedom, the leisure, whatever it is that you look and admire, you can have it if you adopt that mindset. People like us do things like this. It doesn't come without the doing. So it's in that doing and the replication of what it is that somebody does that you like. It's in the doing that you get. It's in the doing that you become and train your brain. It's not a passive thing at all. You've got to retrain the brain or your mind, subconscious, whatever you want to call it. It takes effort. It takes pruning. It takes going in and removing. Just like a diamond. The diamond isn't revealed by something you add to it. The wealth and beauty of a diamond is revealed by what you remove. Cheryl Richardson said something in a PBS special probably 25 years ago that Tiffany and I listened to, and we've never forgotten it, and we remind each other of it all the time. A quality of life isn't about what you add to it, but more about what you remove. So there's a really good chance there are some things you need to go in and prune relative to, what do you think, money grows on trees? What do you think you are, the Rockefellers? What do you need this $5 for? What are you talking about? Jim Rohn talked about a woman who was in a mildly verbally abusive relationship with a man. She said to her husband, "Hey, I need $10 for tomorrow." And he said, "What for?" And she made a determination in that moment that never again would she ask him for a dime. She went on to start a very small little seedling business that grew into a miniature empire because she made a determination to change her thinking and change her life. Thus, she changed her world. Never again did she ask him for a dollar.
Well, so sometimes we got to change our stinking thinking out, like I said, to accentuate the positive and to change how our subconscious works and look at how we look through the world, look at the world through that lens, that UI, as you said, user interface of our attitude.
I knew you were a nerd. And the other thing is to forgive. I think this is a fundamental to all of this because we don't want to go pruning in anger. We don't want to go trimming the tree with a bit of rage or resentment towards what had happened or how our young brains were trained or what we didn't get exposed to as children or maybe what we did in hostility, whatever it is. You've got to forgive. You have to forgive those that influenced you and just give them the benefit of the doubt they did the best they could with what they've got. Let's assume that. Let's also forgive you. Because if you don't forgive yourself, if you don't accept yourself and say, look, I'm going to start where I am with what I've got. Where else could you start? Well, you could wait. You could wait for another 5, 10, 20 years, whatever. But you could start here, start now with an underlayment of forgiveness. Because just like if you're laying a linoleum floor, if you do not sweep that floor clean, you do not prepare the floor properly, whatever's underneath the linoleum will telegraph right through and eventually break through. And so you have to be careful. And I think the greatest cleansing gift you could give yourself is a forgiveness colonic. And just forgive yourself and those that have got you to a point that you don't care for. It's not too late. Start with forgiveness.
Okay. All right. Final thoughts here, Chris. 90 seconds here. Finalize. How do we change our roots on our bonsai tree here?
Well, thanks for bringing up my brand new book, The Millionaire Code, available at Amazon now. I bring that up just A, to sell copies of the book, B, because I care for the message so much. I wanted to influence as many as possible. And C, because I dedicated it to Charles Huff, a man who had money, means, but by no means owed me a single thing in the world, and yet touched me on the shoulder, handed me a book and a reputation, and said, you can do this. And I think that is a well-lived life. I think removing attitude and replacing it with positive thinking. Thank you, Michael.
All right, Chris. Thank you so much for coming on board this morning. We appreciate it. All right, folks. Well, that does it for us. Chris, he pulled me back from the ledge there. I was having a little bit of a moment, and he's helped me as always. He's a great guy. And we appreciate him. You can find him at ilovehomeralaska.com. Like I said, I was going to finish his book this weekend, but I was so sick. Now my voice is almost normal. So hopefully by the end of this week, we'll have something put together for him. And you'll be able to hear the Millionaire Code on Audible soon as well. Coming up tomorrow, Bernadette Wilson, candidate for governor, and maybe somebody else. The Michael Duke Show. Okay. So thank you guys for coming on board. We're going to wrap the show up, but I will ask if anybody wants to stay for a few minutes here to help me sort out my audio problems. You're welcome to. That way you can answer questions and tell me whether you can hear stuff or not, or blah, 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 blah. I'll cut all this out of the podcast, but it'll be at the end of the broadcast. So if you want to go, we'll see you later. If a couple of you want to hang out and just answer my yes or no questions, can you hear this? Can you not? That'd be great. I'm going to see if I can fix some of these. I do not know what's going on with this thing. I do not know. So be kind. Love one another. Live well. We'll see you guys tomorrow with Bernadette Wilson. Have a good day.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.
Okay, I've stopped the podcast recording. The stream is still going, but I'm going to see if I can fix a few things here. Just because, guys, I don't know what the actual hell is going on with half this stuff. I literally updated one piece of equipment. And it was supposed to be a small update, had some cool bells and whistles in it. I'm like, okay, it's been a while since. Okay, so I did, and it busted everything. Absolutely everything. And so now I'm going to see if I can, I'm going to see if we can get some of this done. So first off, I guess we'll talk about the ding. Does the ding? No. God, dang it. So first of all, I guess you guys will tell me if you can hear this. Could you guys hear that? Sure. Just tell me if you can. I'm sure. I mean, I can test it, but it doesn't pop up when it's supposed to. Yes, you can hear it. Yes. And why is this not? Okay. All right. Yes. Got that. Countdown timer. It's all good. Turn it on. Do I want to loop it? No. No, I don't want to loop it. Okay, no, I don't want to loop it. Good God Almighty. I'll try this again real quick here. So I'll play that. Meanwhile, let me see if I can get my phone reconnected to the system, because it does. No. Now, see, I'm going to have to restart the. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with the phone thing. The other thing is that I started to do all my bumper music and everything, but now it's all on the same fader with the guests, and so now I can't play it under the guest without turning the guest down. So let me test one more thing here for you guys. I appreciate you being my guinea pigs. Give me the screen. Give me the screen. All right. Audio. Disabled. Default. Cable. Input. Apply. Okay. And now. No, that wasn't it. Let me do this. There we go. Let's try that again. Can you guys hear that? There's music. Supposed to be music in there. If you guys can hear that, let me know. Barbara says she's hearing the music. Okay, she's hearing the music, but I'm not at this point. Oh, not now. Not now. Okay. This makes life so much easier when I do it this way. How about that? Let's try that. See if we can get that going on. Okay. Okay, you guys hear that now? You guys hear that? Okay. So,
say please.
Please. All right. I think I got that part squared away. I just want to start smacking stuff here with a hammer in a minute. Okay, that's Maine. That's Maine. That's Maine. Okay. All right. Heard your outro and the whip. And Chris Story wants to talk again. Hello, Chris Story. It's just you, me, and 25 of our closest friends on the internet right now.
Oh, you're still on. You're still streaming. Oh, okay.
I'm just trying to fix some of the audio, and their volunteers who are out there listening to me
nice.
make noises and bang hammers and stuff.
You need a name for the core of your club.
The core of the core. Yes.
Well, you got that. But
Yeah.
I'm thinking about I don't know, Michael's Minions. I wouldn't like that. If I was Michael's minion and they're like one of those cute little minions from the Despicables.
Right.
You are despicable.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
I was just gonna say how proud of myself I am that I was able to download the app for StreamYard and make that happen this morning.
Well,
that just made my day. You made me feel like a real nerd.
Well, I don't want to bemean you, but there's no app. All you do is follow the link, and your phone just does it. There's no app. So, but I mean, you're right.
Well, I downloaded the app, and now I have it.
Oh.
And it says copy the link in for the StreamYard studio, and I did. And man, okay. Well, in future, I will.
You could
just know to look for you.
You could just call in on that from now on. That's a permanent link. So feel free to just dial in when you're ready.
Right.
Okay.
All right. Well, I'll let you and your 25 Michael's Minions get back to work.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. Barbara says the core of the core. The core of the core works good. You guys are the core of the core. I don't know what's going on with the sorry. I do not know what is going. It's output. Yes, it's the output. I don't know what's going on with the freaking with the timer here. I do not know what is happening here. Why this will not give me an alarm when it's supposed to give me an alert. It's been working for 7 years. And then all of a sudden, now it's not working at all. Ding, no ding. Okay. Well, when all else fails, you shut it off and you turn it back on. I think that's what I'm going to have to start doing. I have to start shutting everything off and turning everything back on every day. All right. Well, I appreciate you guys. I think I've got as much as I've got. I don't know. I don't even know anymore. Well, I can see I've got another 2 hours worth of work in front of me. Thank you guys for being patient with me. I did get the one thing shifted. So now Chris is going to be, I didn't test the one of the things that I thought I fixed was the fact that you guys could never hear my, like if I did YouTube or something else like that, you guys never, you guys couldn't hear that. And so I wanted to see if you guys could hear my desktop audio from YouTube. So let me throw. Yeah. Can you guys hear this? Can you guys hear that? You guys hear all that? No. You guys still couldn't hear it. I thought I fixed it. You guys still can't hear it. You still can't hear it. What the? Right. Okay. All right. So you guys can't hear that, even though it's showing up in the. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. Yep. Okay. Well, I can hear you saying, can you hear that? Can you hear that? Well, thank you. Thank you guys for being my guinea pigs today. I just can't fathom it.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me. I just don't fathom it.
Okay. Well, guys, thank you for helping me out today. I appreciate it. And we will see you. I got my normal bed or I don't know if you guys can hear that. You guys hear that music? Okay. So at least I've got the bump out music, but for some reason it does not want to play YouTube audio over. Who knows? Oh, you know what I should do? Let me do this real quick. I'm going to test this one last time. One last time here. I'm going to see if you guys hear this. Oh, wait. No, I can't hear it. Oh, see, now I busted it for myself. I can't hear it at all. Here we go. Yeah. Okay. Well, I tried to see if that would fix it, and the answer is a big no. All right. Well, thank you guys. I appreciate it. We will we'll catch you guys tomorrow with Bernadette muffled sounds. That's probably because it's coming through my headset. So you're hearing it outside my headset. Okay. Well, thank you guys. I appreciate it. As always, I couldn't do it without you. We'll see you guys later. Show. God, that was bugging me. All right. It's a little better. It's a little better. Okay.
On Facebook.
Guess we'll see what happens. All right. Well.
And Michael.
Here. Our subconscious together for him, and you'll be able to.